Peter Gang.
Here.
Mr. Cohen is absent. Ms. Fraga.
Here.
Mr. Williamson.
Here.
Okay, we have a pretty short agenda tonight, but before we get going on it, I just wanted to open the floor if there's anybody who'd like to speak to anything that's not on the agenda. Seeing no one, I'll close public comment and we'll move on to our work session and the resolution for tonight. And just by way of short introduction, we have been working with Sustainable Princeton and Gable Associates to see if we can aggregate our energy with the dual purpose of seeing if we can get a better rate for our residents and also switch to greener power. And this is part of that process. And I'd like to turn it over to Rob Chilton from Gable and to Christine Symington from Sustainable Princeton to let us know how today's bidding went. I should also just say the reason why we're having this meeting tonight is that we have a narrow window in which to act on the bids, and for whatever reason that I still don't fully understand, we can't do it on Monday when we have our normal council meeting. So that's why we are here tonight with this sort of funny agenda, having just met last night. So with that, I'll turn it over to the two of you.
Yeah. Thank you, Mayor Lempert. I do want to mention that there was a ad hoc subcommittee of the Princeton Environmental Commission that was really the group that looked closely at implementing renewable government energy aggregation program and work with Chilton. So it wasn't just Sustainable Princeton. We have folks from the PEC involved. And so that was Sophie Glovier, the chair, and Shosh from the Environmental Commission, Heidi Fichtenbaum, as well as David Cohen, part of that sort of group. I will give a little bit more background. You may recall this was an action in the Climate Action Plan that came out of the Energy Working Group as something that we could do as a community that would not only help save money for residents, but also do our part to try to encourage the development of more renewable energy in our area. So Gable Consultant was the consultant that the town engaged to help the process, and I'll hand it over to Bob to fill everybody in on what's happened since the last time we met to talk about the bids that were received for the town.
Okay. Thank you, Christine. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me back. That's right. So this flows out of a bid process that was launched in November when we first went out to bid to request pricing proposals from suppliers for renewable energy supply for the residents. The base product that we bid for is a product that is 50% renewable energy, which is a little more than twice the renewable energy content that PSE&G provides through default supply service. There's also included an option for individual residents, if they so choose, to what we call opt up to a 100% renewable product for a modest premium which has been established and the suppliers bid on. We first took bids back in December. At that time, the decision was made not to award a contract. At that time, we had a PSE&G tariff price. What folks are currently paying for power under the PSE&G tariff as approved by the state was a good bit lower than what the bid prices came in at. So it just didn't make sense at that time. We did at least highly suspect that the PSE&G tariff rate would be increasing as we moved into 2020.
Sorry, number one, is your microphone on? And then can you make sure that you speak close to it?
Okay, I'm sorry. So at the time we accepted bids in December, the PSE&G tariff price was a good bit below where the bid prices came in. We had a good suspicion that the PSE&G price for power would be going up in 2020, but we really didn't know how much or when, so we didn't want to speculatively assume that the bid prices that we were getting back then were beneficial. So we decided to hold off on an award. We waited about 3 months when we decided to give it another shot, given market conditions were improving with energy prices dropping, and also we got more clarity on where the PSE&G prices were going for 2020. The PSE&G rates for power supply increased on February 1st by about 3.5%. And then we now know, based upon a recent filing, that they're going to go up a further 6 to 7% effective in June. So we know that customers on PSE&G supply have already seen an increase and are going to see another sizable increase in June. So now when we accept the new prices for this, this contract would start in June at the same time that the PSE&G prices are changing. So the prices we received today, while they are a little bit above where the PSE&G price currently sits, we know that as of June, the PSE&G price, by way of example, will be going up to about an average of about 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And the low bid today is just a little over 13 cents, just a little under 13.1 cents. So the low bid that came in today would actually mitigate the price increase that folks would otherwise be seeing in June if they just stayed with PSE&G. So the price, again, the low bid price is about 13.083 cents. Again, as compared to the PSE&G average price of about 13.5 cents. And that is the baseline product for the bid that we received, which has 50% renewable energy, as compared to PSE&G, which is about 23% renewable energy. So it's twice the renewable energy content and then some, and you know, a modest saving. So it really is the best of both worlds, where there's going to be a little bit of cost savings, and the renewable energy content is significantly larger. And as I said earlier, there's also the option in this bid documents for individual customers. If a contract award was made, they could choose the 100% renewable product and pay just a little bit more than the PSE&G tariff. But I think certainly it's a lower price than the general product that is available in the marketplace for 100% renewable energy. And the renewable energy content is all from this region of the country, where typically when suppliers are offering a 100% wind product in the general market, that tends to be wind power that's coming from Texas and Oklahoma, further away, less environmental impact, less jobs impact. So this is more localized renewable energy at a lower price. So, you know, we think it's definitely a good result. It looks to be a modest savings off the PSE&G rate, and you know, like I said, twice the renewable energy content. So, you know, overall, we think it's a good result. Oh, I'm sorry. And the contract would begin in June. We bid for 3 different potential lengths of contract, either 12, 18, or 24 months. The low bid came in for the 18-month contract, so that would take us from June of 2020 until December of 2021. And then typically about 6 months before the end of a contract, if a municipality has had a positive experience, the typical process is to start the rebidding process about 6 months before, to start the cycle over again to bid again. There's no automatic rollover or renewal. This is a finite contract term, at the end of which the contract either ends or a new contract takes its place through another bid process.
Great, thank you. Did you want to add something, Chris? You don't have to, but I didn't.
Perhaps, Bob, you could remind folks what the process would be from a resident's perspective, should council decide to accept the bid?
Sure. So under the state laws and the Board of Public Utility rules under which this program is implemented, there's an opt-out process where residents are advised of the program. A mailing would go out around the end of the first week of April. That would start a 30-day opt-out period, during which folks could decide if they wanted to remove themselves from the program. After that 30-day period is up, let's say at the end of the first week of May, the supplier, Constellation New Energy, who was the low bidder, would then enroll the accounts, contact PSE&G, and notify them as of the June meter read date that they should be marked down as the supplier of record for the customer. Customers have an ongoing ability to opt out at any time throughout the contract. The initial 30-day opt-out period is only germane to the initial enrollment by customers. If someone opts out within the first 30 days, they will never be enrolled at all. If they do not opt out within 30 days, they will be enrolled, but they still have the ability to change their mind and opt out a month in, 6 months in, 12 months in, whatever the case may be. Without penalty, there are prohibitions against any termination penalties. Folks can get out anytime. They don't have to give a reason, and there's no penalty or fees. Did I miss anything?
And then if you want to opt up?
If you want to opt up, that would be during the initial 30-day period as well. The supplier has committed to I call it a green premium, the premium for opting up to 100%, which is based upon the current market cost for the additional renewable energy. So the opt-up period has to be limited because they can't hold that price indefinitely because market prices do change. So the opt-up decision would be within that same 30-day period.
And based on the lowest bid that was received today, what would a typical resident see as the savings on their utility bill for that base product?
So based upon the published PSE&G rate that would go into effect in June, the average savings would be something like $3.50 per month. The PSE&G rate, because they have some nuances in the way they actually charge every month, it varies somewhat up and down. So we think the actual savings might be a little lower than that, maybe between $1 and $2 per month. So the savings are, not huge, but they are still, just to get the extra renewable energy for a cost that's a little bit cheaper than the PSE&G, I think it's still a positive. But I would say the general estimate would be somewhere between $1 or $2.
But over the life of the contract, they would have saved.
So that would
versus
be,
the-
say, $2 times 18, so $36, something like that.
Yeah.
So,
Are there any other questions, Michelle?
Yeah, so just so I understand, so someone's going to get, all the residents in Princeton would get a mailing to their mailbox, and if they don't send an opt-out, they automatically get enrolled in the program?
that's correct. That's the way the program is set up. That's the way the structure is set up under the state rules.
And then what happens to their service? Like if they have a service outage, are they still PSE&G customers, but what happens with that?
Right, so that's the way we describe it. So basically, the only change that a customer will experience is on their PSE&G bill, one line item on the bill will change from the PSE&G price for power supply to the Constellation New Energy price for power supply. PSE&G still is the delivery company, so they still read the meter, they still render the bill, they still maintain the distribution system, they still will repair when outages occur, they still are the entity that a customer calls to restore service. None of that changes. Delivery service is still PSE&G's responsibility. It's still overseen by the New Jersey Board of Public Utilities, and they're responsible to the state for keeping the lights on. The way this whole retail choice system is set up by the state, and this is going back 20 years when the market first opened up, is that PSE&G makes all of their profit off the delivery service. When they provide power supply, what they're doing simply is they're buying power in the wholesale market, and then they're reselling it to customers with no markup, and that's under the state rules. So the PSE&G makes no money off the power supply. All their money is off delivery. So they have no financial incentive or disincentive with respect to who a customer supplier is.
Okay.
And they still have every incentive to get the lights back on, because then the meter starts spinning and they can start making money on delivery again.
Right. So power outages, lines down, all that, they'd
That's
still
PSE&G
handle all
all the way.
that. So it's pretty, I mean, it's delivery to the end user, the customer's really not going to be noticeable.
No, there's no
Standpoint.
physical
I
change
mean,
whatsoever.
There's nothing changing.
Yeah. The
And
power's
what-
still coming from
yeah.
the same grid.
Other municipalities that have done this?
Quite a few. There's over 50 municipalities in the state that have done a energy aggregation program, and there's probably a dozen or so that have done renewable energy programs. So they've added that renewable energy component. It's definitely becoming more prevalent. You know, this type of program has been around for about 8 years now. The first town did an energy aggregation in 2012. It was a small town, Plumstead, down in Ocean County. And until about a year and a half ago, none of the programs included a renewable energy component. So this is becoming more of the wave where more towns that are doing energy aggregation are including renewable energy component. So you're still certainly on the forefront. This has really been in the last year, year and a half that it's really caught on. But I think it's the trend of the future.
And the other towns, what was their, do you have any idea what their percentage of opting out was?
So it's pretty consistently somewhere between 5 and 10% over time. And then other people sort of, there's attrition over time for various reasons. But the initial opt-out is usually somewhere between 5 and 10%. You know, it varies a little bit, but that's fairly consistent what it is.
If I may add to that, that's the 5 to 10% is initial opt-out. That's not opt-out after the opt-out window has. Well, you can always opt out, but after the initial opt-out window is closed.
Correct. It's
Right.
after that first 30-day period.
Right.
And then, you know, as I said, when folks move, their account gets closed. They're no longer in the program. Some people opt out just for various reasons throughout the contract. Other people opt in. So that's the initial, as you said, the initial 30-day period. Usually that's about what it is, somewhere in that range.
But once after the 30 days, what would the percentage be then of people who opt out?
Well, I mean, there's general attrition over time based on turnover in the town. So what happens is when a customer moves, their account gets closed, they automatically leave the program. And there's no automatic way to pick up the new customer. The new customer is not, the new customer number is not, you know, that's not something the supplier is aware of. So those new folks would have to opt in. And we actually had a little sidebar conversations about whether we could include literature on the program in, say, new resident packages, things of that nature. So there's generally sort of this gradual attrition over time, maybe 1% or 2% per month, just based on those types of factors. And then you try to backfill with new customers that come in.
It was very small.
But that's smaller, yeah.
I'm just wondering, you know, we have so few opportunities.
Sorry, wait, hold on. Ms. Frog has been waiting to speak,
sorry.
and then I'll recognize you.
I'm sorry, my big head is close.
No, I just had a couple of questions. So you mentioned the opt-in program, you said it was 50% renewable energy, and the opt-up is 100%?
Right, so
And
the,
is,
I'm
so
sorry,
the follow-up question was, there is difference in price of what?
there is. So the baseline bid price that I mentioned of a little under 13.1 cents, that's for the baseline product that
Right.
everyone gets by default, which is the 50% renewable. And then the price for the 100% renewable product is known, it's going to be advertised, it's 0.6 cents per kilowatt hour higher.
Okay.
So it's a little under 13.7 cents per kilowatt hour,
Okay,
which is about 1.5% higher than the PSE&G rate, so just slightly higher than the PSE&G rate.
so that would be for opt-up, so it wouldn't be automatically opt-in. So yeah, and I think I understood that, but my second question, and I think I asked when you first presented, for our residents who are non-English speakers, would they have that information in alternate language as far as for them to understand that this is a program that they can opt out of?
Right, so the mailer goes out, the way it works under the state rules is the mailer goes out, the letter's in English, and there's a program summary in English, and then there's a line in Spanish language at the bottom of the program summary, letting folks know where they can reach out for a Spanish language version of the program summary, and that's something we do. So we'll have the program summary provided to a translation company. We'll have a Spanish language version available. We'll have a PDF proof of it, so we can provide it to the municipality. We'll have copies, and the supplier, Constellation Energy, would have copies as well.
And any other languages, such as Mandarin?
I mean, it's not, I mean, I guess they could be made available. It wasn't, you know, provided in the base documents, but I assume that's something that could be done.
Okay. Mhm. Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Ms. Sachs, you're next.
Well, that was sort of my question, but basically, so the opt-up is approximately 1% higher than what you would?
No, it's about 5% higher than the base price. What I said is it's about 1.5% higher than the PSE&G rate. So our price is a little bit below the PSE&G rate, the baseline price. If you opt up, you'll pay just a little bit more than the PSE&G price, but you'll be getting 100%.
Right.
So on an average Princeton utility bill, how much more would they pay on a monthly bill if they chose to opt up to the premium 100%
It's
product?
about, the average customer will be something like $4 or $5 a month.
So I first heard about this at the League of Municipalities conference about 3 years ago, and I just thought it was so incredibly exciting and amazing that someone had designed something where basically PSE&G is not losing. The towns are, if you do it right, are getting a better financial deal. And we're able to do something which is environmentally responsible. It just seems like such a win-win-win. And those wins in the sustainability world are so unfortunately very rare. Often we have to pay more or somebody loses out in the way. And so I'm just wondering, why is this not, and maybe it's just because, it takes time, but it seems like every town should adopt this. And why isn't it more, it just seems like such a no-brainer. I'm wondering why everyone hasn't already adopted it.
Well, every town is unique in terms of what its priorities are. Some folks are just, a little nervous about being on the forefront of an unknown. And so as more towns are doing it, I think there's more of a comfort level. They can talk to more of their colleagues and sort of talk about the experience and get more comfortable with it. So I think it's something that's gaining steam. There's definitely a lot of, trepidation when you first talk to towns about it, because it's certainly something brand new, and you have to get over the hump of understanding that utility service for residents isn't going to change. That's a big one. Some residents just have a natural reluctance to
It's
the
just
competitive market. They don't,
resistance to change.
it's something new, right? So I think there's always, towns that are prudently cautious. Some are a little more bold than others, and then I think it's generally proven itself. So I think it's kind of picking up steam. But again, every town is unique that I talk to. That's for sure.
Well, I'm excited that for us to be in the forefront. I think that's, and in terms of the opt-up, how will residents find out so that they're able, can you also opt up at any time? Or I think you were saying you can only opt up in the very beginning,
The
right?
opt-up is at the beginning, and the way they would find out, it's in the same mailer. So the mailer would have the program information. Here's the base product, here's the opt-up product. If you want to get out completely, here's how to opt out. If you want to opt up, here's how you do that. The reason that there's a limited expiration date on the opt-up is because the premium, the additional cost for the 100% renewable, is based upon the current market price from renewable energy, and that changes over time. So if we had asked the supplier to hold that premium for 18 months, one of two things would have happened. Either they would have put they would ask for a much higher premium to cover the risk of market movement over 18 months, or they would have just said, I can't bid, it's too much risk for me. So we put a window on that period of time, so they only have a month's worth of market risk on renewable energy. Now, at the end of the 30 days, we can certainly have a conversation with the supplier, and if the market has been stable, we can certainly ask them to extend that. They're not obligated to do so, but I think if the market would hold, I don't see why they wouldn't do that. But that's really the reason why we had to limit it, because we wanted to make sure it was a workable premium. It didn't go sky high, or we didn't just scare the supplier away completely.
Thanks.
If I may add to Mia's question in your answer, I would also presume that the reason why some towns were hesitant to get involved in the program is that a lot of citizens just don't understand how the energy grid works. Like, people think PSE&G is a producer of energy, which they're not, if I'm not mistaken. They're only a delivery service. Energy is produced by other groups, and PSE&G used to go to them to get the energy. I think most people assume that PSE&G also produces their energy. And I think that's part of the problem, so they're
Oh, that's
thinking.
absolutely true.
Right, they think, right.
And, you know, let's face it, until 20 years ago, that was the case.
Okay.
Utilities were all what we call vertically integrated.
Right.
They did everything, produced it, transmitted it, distributed it, the whole 9 yards. So that is certainly the default understanding of most residents that have been around for a while. And so, you know, some governing bodies, you know, sort of appreciate that a good chunk of their residency doesn't have that, you know, that level of expertise, and then, you know, they realize it's going to take some education. So that's certainly part of it. And you're right, that's not, in reality, PSE&G is just a wires company now, and they've been buying power on the market for 20 years, and they haven't been producing it themselves. So this is really nothing novel in terms of what's really actually happening. But as you said, folks don't always don't appreciate that, because that's kind of, you know, to some extent, it's in the weeds if you're not paying that close attention.
Right.
Ms. Niedergrange, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. I just want to review with you a couple of things that I remember from when this idea was first presented, which is, in addition to the letter that gets sent out, you'll get the end user information from PSE&G. You send out the letter, but you'll also handle like all of our marketing or website, or like basically this is a full service package in which we won't have to worry about developing the messaging or anything like that. So I don't know if my new colleagues, you know, got that part of the picture, so I just wanted to outline that. And then we had a brief conversation before this about people who have already kind of been in the forefront of signing up for renewable energy. And can you just, for the benefit of the other members of council, just go over what people who've already selected a third-party energy provider, what would the process be for them in case questions come up from members of the community? Thank you.
Got it. So under state rules, this type of a program we're not allowed to automatically include folks that already have their own third-party supply contract. And the reason basically is not knowing if individuals signed up for an individual contract, really no one knows what the price is, what the terms are, how long it is, if there's any termination fees. So the way it's set up is PSE&G, when we ask them for the list of eligible customers in the town, they will exclude, they will not tell us who, for the customers who already have their own deal, they will not tell us who they are. So there's no way of reaching them. So those folks are allowed to opt into the program, but they have to do so affirmatively on their own. So what we'll do is when we prepare materials for your website, we will include in our FAQs information addressing just that specific point, where folks are certainly eligible to leave what the deal they have now and opt in, but we always caution folks, make sure you understand the deal you have now, because we wouldn't want you to just hurry and leave and then realize a month later you triggered a $100 early termination fee with your current supplier. So we just advise people, review the deal you have now, make sure you're not going to trigger any penalties on your part, or maybe you have to wait till the 4 more months till your contract ends and then you can opt in. So there's certainly, we tell people you're welcome to opt in if you have your own deal, but please carefully read what you have now to make sure you're not going to trigger any penalties.
And just one more quick question. So aside from the one letter that you will send out to everybody, are people at risk of getting emails or other types of communications, or it's just kind of again, some people are like, oh, I don't want to change because, you know, you're going to email me or call me or whatever. So it's basically a single letter, and then after that, it's up to them if they want to take action.
Correct. The supplier is prohibited from direct marketing, so they can't, there's no door-to-door, there's no pestering. Here's the information, and then it's up to them. So the other thing I was going to mention is during the opt-out period, what we typically do, and we usually schedule this and announce it in that mailer, is we conduct a public information session where folks can come out. I guess we'll have to sort of play it by ear and figure out whether that's going to be a virtual telephone, you know, one over the internet or something. But typically we have a public information session where folks are invited to come out and ask questions, et cetera. So I guess we'll have to just sort of play that by ear, how we conduct that. But that's something we do as well.
Couple more. Yeah, I've got a couple more questions. Just to follow on, so we would do some kind of a press release, and there would be some, and you'd help us with the press, and I mean, just getting the word out. You said, and there would be some, type of help with the website and FAQs and that type of thing.
Right, I mean, we don't
Okay.
manage a website, but
No,
we'll
but
prepare
you'd help
materials
us
for
with
you to
that, right.
upload. Obviously, you
Yeah.
can make whatever editorial changes you deem appropriate.
Okay.
And so we'll handle all that. Certainly happy to help you draft initial press release.
Yeah.
We've done several.
I
So
think
we
we'd
can-
need
we can
some
support in any
something,
way you
yeah.
like us to.
Yeah, it would need some kind of communication campaign. I don't like to rely on just something that goes in the mail because people
Understood.
don't always look. Two more questions. This is just for residents, not commercial?
Correct, just for residents. The rules technically allow for business participation, but it is completely different process, and it has been tried in the past and it has been an epic failure. It just doesn't work. Businesses, it just doesn't mix together. This really works best just for residents.
Okay. And last question is, does the percentage of participation affect the cost at all? Like the more participation, it doesn't?
No, the suppliers were given the initial eligibility pool,
Okay.
and the price is the price. They understand they have what we call volume risk. And the suppliers that have been in the business doing this, and Constellation New Energy has, they have their own internal models where they model attrition rates and they work that volume risk into their pricing. So that's the risk is on
Okay.
them.
Thank you.
Do want to make council aware that other towns that have moved forward with RGEA, that they do experience other third-party electricity providers start marketing and trying to, keep some customers or gain new customers. So I think we'll be aware of that, and we can help get in front of those kinds of things. But just want to make council aware that, there will, because this is a public process, these other third-party electricity providers who are out there marketing already are going to try to come in and try to capture some customers.
Yeah, we've experienced that. It's just a natural event. This is such a public process and very transparent. The industry gets words of it, and other suppliers try to hone in and, say they have a better deal, et cetera. So it's something we just have to be mindful of and keep an eye on.
And have you, I don't know if I should ask this question public or not, but we have experienced power outages in the past where we have a lot of lines down, and have you noticed any difference in service if for towns that have opted to do this?
No, I mean, we get that question a lot during public meetings and things like that. It's certainly a suspicion, but once the programs have started, I have never had one town even allude to anything like that. And again, there's a few reasons for it. One is the state still, Board of Public Utilities still regulates and oversees delivery service. And so if the utility were to play any favorites in terms of who got their power turned on first because of this type of program, they'd be in a world of trouble with the BPU. Secondly, as I mentioned earlier, PSE&G makes all their profit margin on delivery service, so they have every incentive to get everyone's lights on as soon as possible and get the meters spinning as well. And then thirdly, the way the electricity grid works is largely the grid is interconnected, and there really is no physical way for PSE&G to pick and choose which neighborhoods to turn on first, last. I mean, in any given street, some people are on third-party supply, some aren't. PSE&G can't, not fix the substation at the end of the street or the transformer, and pick and choose who gets their lights on, et cetera. So there's really no physical way to do it, even if they were nefarious enough to want to do so.
Great. Are there any additional?
Also, just if folks in town have solar, how will this affect them?
Well, so we have found that people that have solar, by and large, are better off not being on any third-party supply contract, because solar typically relies on something called banking and net metering, which PSE&G provides as you can bank your overproduction in the summer, then use it to offset electricity usage in the fall and the winter, and get the full retail credit for the solar. PSE&G, the utility, is the only entity that's able to do that. Suppliers are not able to do that. So customers with solar are by and large better off not being on third-party supply. Nothing to do with this particular type of program, any third-party supply. So what we have done over the years is we have asked PSE&G, and when we get the initial customer list, is they will mark folks that have solar, and they will be removed from the initial eligibility list to make sure we don't put people on that's something that may not benefit them. Individual folks with solar, just like people with our existing third-party supply, are certainly invited to and they are able to opt in, but the same thing as the third-party supply people, we advise them to look at your bills first and make sure you're not relying heavily on the banking and the metering that PSE&G provides. If you are, you're better off just staying with PSE&G. So we just found, that's the best way to do it, to address the typical scenario where solar customers are better off not being on third-party supply.
Great. All right, any further comments? Okay, I just wanted to direct everybody. We actually have 2 resolutions here, and they say the opposite because we need to take affirmative action one way or the other on the bid. So I hear from everybody some enthusiasm and support for moving forward. So I'd recommend then that somebody make a motion to approve item 2134, which is the resolution awarding a contract to a third-party power supplier to provide electric generation service to Princeton community energy aggregation participants and to provide government energy aggregation services in connection with the PCEA.
So moved.
Oh,
Second.
Okay, wow. All right, so moved by Ms. Sachs, and I'm going to say seconded by Ms. Fraga, and all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, and we're just not going to take action on the next resolution, and is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Great, all right, thank you very much, and meeting is adjourned.
Congratulations, that's been a long haul for you.